The rancher lived alone for years until he married the last Apache woman no one else wanted. Jake Morrison hadn't spoken to another human being in 3 months, not since the last supply run to Copper Creek, not since the fever took his cattle and left him with empty pastures and a half-dead ranch. He was fixing the barn door when he heard horses coming up the trail. 4 riders, moving fast. Jake reached for his rifle and stepped into the shadows. The men stopped near his well, dusty, tired, mean-looking, the kind who took what they wanted and asked questions later. One of them had something draped over his saddle, something that moved. "You Jake Morrison?" the leader called out. Jake stepped onto his porch, rifle ready. "Depends who's asking." "Name's Carter. We got business to discuss." The thing on the saddle stirred. Jake saw long black hair, a woman's arm hanging down. His stomach tightened. "What kind of business?" Carter dismounted and walked closer. "The kind that pays well. We got ourselves a little problem. Apache girl we can't seem to get rid of. Captured her 3 days ago after her people raided the Fletcher place. Killed 2 families. Jake's grip tightened on his rifle. "What's that got to do with me?" "Well, see, we can't take her to town. Too many questions. Can't let her go. She'll bring more trouble. And we ain't the type to harm a woman, even an Apache one." He spat in the dirt. "Heard you lived alone out here. Thought maybe you could use some company." The woman on the horse lifted her head. Even from 20 feet away, Jake could see the defiance in her dark eyes. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her dress was torn. There was dried blood on her lip. "How much?" Jake heard himself ask. Carter grinned. $50, and she's yours to do with as you please." Jake looked at the woman again. She was staring right at him now. Not pleading, not afraid, just watching, waiting to see what kind of man he was. "I ain't got $50. "Then what you got?" Jake thought about his empty house, his silent meals, the way he talked to his horse because there was no one else to talk to. He thought about the woman's eyes and how they reminded him of a trapped animal that hadn't given up fighting. "I got $20 and a good horse." Carter looked back at his men. They nodded. "Deal." The money changed hands. The woman was untied and pushed off the horse. She landed hard, but got to her feet without help. Carter remounted. "Word of advice, Morrison. Keep her tied up for a few days. Apache women are tricky. They'll smile at you and cut your throat while you sleep." The riders disappeared down the trail in a cloud of dust. Jake stood on his porch, rifle in one hand, looking at the woman in his yard. She was young, maybe 25, beautiful in a wild way that made his chest tight. Her dress was deerskin with beadwork that caught the afternoon light. She was also the most dangerous thing that ever set foot on his property. "You speak English?" he asked. She said nothing, just kept staring at him with those dark eyes. "I ain't gonna hurt you, but I can't let you run off either. Not yet." Still nothing. Jake walked to his barn and came back with a length of rope. "I'm sorry about this." For the first time, she spoke. Her voice was low and clear. "Sorry does not change what you do." Her English was perfect. Will Jake's decision destroy everything he's worked for? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Jake tied the rope around her wrists, but not tight enough to hurt. She didn't fight him. She just watched his hands and his face like she was memorizing everything about him. "What's your name?" he asked. She turned away. Jake led her to the cabin. It was one room with a stone fireplace and a bed he'd built himself. Not much to look at, but it was clean. He pointed to a chair by the fire. "Sit there. I'll make some food." She sat but kept her back straight, ready to move if she had to. Jake heated up beans and salt pork in a cast-iron pot. The smell filled the cabin. His stomach growled. He'd been eating cold food for days, too tired to bother with cooking. He filled 2 bowls and set one in front of her. Then he untied her hands. Try to run and I'll catch you. Try to hurt me and I'll tie you up tighter." She rubbed her wrists where the rope had been. Red marks showed against her brown skin. She picked up the spoon and ate slowly, never taking her eyes off of him. "Those men," Jake said between bites, "they said your people killed families. That true?" She stopped eating. "Your people killed my brother 2 moons ago. Shot him for hunting on land that belonged to my grandfather's grandfather." Jake set down his spoon. "I didn't kill your brother. You bought me like a horse. You are the same." The words hit him like a slap. Jake looked around his empty cabin, at the single bed and the single plate and the single cup, at the life he'd built for one person because he'd never found anyone who wanted to share it. "Maybe I am," he said quietly. That night, Jake gave her the bed and slept on the floor by the fire. He kept his rifle close but didn't tie her up again. If she wanted to run, she could try. But it was 20 miles to the nearest settlement, and the desert was full of things more dangerous than him. She didn't run. Jake woke before dawn to the sound of someone moving around the cabin. He reached for his rifle, then stopped. The Apache woman was at his stove, stirring something in the pot. She'd found his coffee and bacon and made breakfast. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She shrugged. "I was hungry. You are sleeping." Her English was getting better, or maybe she was just deciding to use more of it. "What's your name?" Jake asked again. This time she answered, "Aiyana, Jake Morrison." "I know," the men said. They ate in silence as the sun came up through the single window. Jake watched her eat and wondered what she was thinking, wondered if she was planning to kill him in his sleep or just waiting for her chance to escape. "Why didn't you run last night?" he asked. Aiyana looked at him for a long moment. "Where would I go? My people think I am dead. Your people want me dead. This place is not good, but it is not worse than dying alone in the desert." Jake felt something twist in his chest. He knew exactly what she meant. That morning, he showed her around the ranch, the barn that needed new boards, the fence that was falling down, the well that gave clean water but needed a new rope, the pasture where his cattle used to graze before the fever killed them all. "It's not much, but it's mine, or was mine. Bank's gonna take it soon if I can't pay what I owe." Aiyana walked to the fence and ran her hand along the broken wood. "This can be fixed. You know about fixing fences?" "I know about fixing many things. My father taught me before the soldiers came." Jake studied her face. There was sadness there, but also something else, something that looked like hope. "If you help me fix this place, I'll help you figure out where to go next, when you're ready." Aiyana turned to look at him. "And if I am never ready?" The question hung in the air between them, like smoke from a campfire. Jake didn't answer her question. He couldn't. The thought of her staying forever made something flutter in his chest that he hadn't felt in years, but the thought of keeping her against her will made him sick. They worked together that first week without talking much. Aiyana knew how to use tools. She could hammer nails straight and tie knots that held. Her hands were strong from years of hard work. Jake watched her fix a broken gate hinge and wondered what her life had been like before the soldiers came, before men like Carter decided her fate over a card game. On the 4th day, Aiyana spoke while they were mending fence. "The men who brought me here, they lied about the raid." Jake looked up from the post he was setting. "What do you mean?" "My people did not kill those families. We were hunting deer 20 miles north when it happened. White men did it, dressed like Apache to start trouble." Jake's hammer stopped mid-swing. "How do you know that?" "Because I saw them. 3 white men with painted faces riding away from the Fletcher place. I followed them to be sure. They threw away the paint and the feathers by Miller's Creek." The truth hit Jake like a kick from a mule. Aiyana had been captured for something she didn't do, sold to him like an animal for a crime that was probably committed by men who looked just like him. "Why didn't you tell them that?" Aiyana's laugh was bitter. "You think they would believe an Apache woman over their own kind? You think they cared about truth?" Jake set down his hammer and looked at her. Really looked at her. At the way she held her shoulders straight even when she was tired. At the way she never complained, even when the work was hard. At the way she watched the horizon sometimes, like she was listening for something only she could hear. "I believe you," he said. Something changed in her face. The hardness around her eyes softened just a little. That night, Jake cooked dinner. Rabbit stew with wild onions and the last of his potatoes. Aiyana sat by the fire and watched him work. "You are not like other white men I have met," she said. "How many white men have you met?" "Enough to know the difference between good ones and bad ones." Jake stirred the stew and tried not to think about what category he fell into. He'd bought her, paid money for a human being like she was livestock. That made him one of the bad ones, didn't it? "What will you do when I leave?" Aiyana asked. Jake's spoon stopped moving. "I don't know. Lose the ranch, probably. Move on." "Where will you go?" "Don't know that either." Aiyana was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My grandmother used to say that sometimes the spirits put people in the wrong place so they can find the right place together." Jake looked at her. "You believe that?" "I am starting to." That night, for the first time since she'd arrived, Aiyana smiled at him. Just a small smile, but it lit up her whole face. Jake felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been closed tight for years. 2 weeks later, Jake woke up to find Aiyana standing by the window, staring out at the dawn sky. She was fully dressed. Her few belongings were packed in a cloth bundle by the door. "You're leaving?" She nodded without turning around. "It is time." Jake sat up in bed, his heart pounding. "Where will you go?" "North, to find what is left of my people." "What if there's nothing left to find?" Aiyana finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Then I will make a new life somewhere else." Jake got up and walked to her. He wanted to touch her face, to beg her to stay, to promise her things he had no right to promise. Instead, he just stood there like a fool. "I could come with you," he said quietly. Aiyana's breath caught. "Why would you do that?" "Because this place isn't home without you in it. Because I've been half dead for years and you made me feel alive again. Because I—" Jake stopped. The words were too big for his mouth. "Because you're what?" Jake took a breath and said the truest thing he'd ever said. "Because I love you." The words hung in the air between them like morning mist. Aiyana stared at Jake, her dark eyes searching his face for lies. She'd heard men say love before, usually right before they took something from her. But Jake's eyes were different. They were scared. "You do not know me," she said softly. "I know you fix things that are broken. I know you work harder than any man I've met. I know you sing to yourself when you think I can't hear." Jake stepped closer. "I know you cry at night sometimes, but you never let it make you weak." Aiyana's hand tightened on her bundle. "Love is not enough to make this work. Your people will never accept me. They will call you names, make your life hard. My life's already hard. And mine? What of my life?" Her voice rose. "I am Apache. You are white. We have been enemies for generations. My father would spit on your grave. Your people would burn me alive if they knew you loved me." Jake felt the truth of her words like stones in his chest. She was right. The world they lived in had no place for what he was feeling, no place for them together. But he'd been alone for so long, and she fit into the empty spaces of his life like she'd always belonged there. "Run away with me," he said. "We'll go west, California, Oregon, somewhere nobody knows us." Aiyana shook her head. "Running away does not change what we are." "Then what do you want me to do? Pretend I don't love you? Let you walk out that door and never see you again?" "Yes," the word came out like a knife thrust. "That is exactly what you should do." But she didn't move toward the door. She just stood there, holding her bundle, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Jake reached out slowly and touched her face. She didn't pull away. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't pretend you don't matter." Aiyana closed her eyes. "This will end badly, Jake Morrison, for both of us." "Maybe, but living without you will end badly too." She opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, at his weathered hands and his kind eyes and his mouth that never lied to her. "If I stay as myself, not as your woman, not as your servant, as myself. I wouldn't want you any other way. And if trouble comes because of what we are together, you do not blame me for bringing it. I won't. And if I want to leave someday, you let me go without trying to stop me." Jake's throat got tight. "I will." Aiyana set down her bundle and stepped into his arms. She fit against his chest like she was made to be there. Jake held her tight and breathed in the scent of her hair, sage and wood smoke, and something wild he couldn't name. "This is foolish," she whispered against his neck. "Completely foolish," Jake agreed. They stayed like that until the sun was full up and the day's work was calling. Then Aiyana pulled back and looked at him with a smile that made his heart skip. "Well then, foolish man, if I am staying, this place needs more work than you can do alone." That afternoon they rode into Copper Creek together. Jake needed supplies, and Aiyana said she wanted to see the town that would become her enemy. They got stares. Jake had expected that. What he hadn't expected was how Aiyana handled it. She rode with her back straight and her chin up, looking every person in the eye who dared to look at her. She didn't hide. She didn't apologize for existing. She made Jake proud. At the general store, the owner's wife whispered something to her behind the counter. Jake saw Aiyana's jaw tighten, but she didn't say anything. "You folks need something?" the store owner asked. His voice was cold. "Flour, beans, coffee. Same as always, Mr. Peterson." Peterson's eyes flicked to Aiyana, then back to Jake. "That'll be cash only. No more credit." Jake felt heat rise in his chest. He'd been buying on credit from Peterson for 3 years, never missed a payment. "Fine," Jake said. He put cash on the counter, more than the supplies cost. As they loaded their wagon, Peterson came outside. "Jake," he said quietly, "you sure you know what you're doing?" "I'm sure." "Folks are talking. Say you got yourself an Apache woman out there. Say she might be connected to those killings." Jake turned to face Peterson fully. "Folks say a lot of things. Most of it's lies." "Maybe so, but lies can be dangerous for everyone involved." It was a warning. He heard it clearly. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle, while Aiyana mended a tear in her dress. The silence felt heavy, loaded with unspoken fears. "They will come," Aiyana said, without looking up from her sewing. "Who?" "Men like Carter, men who think they know what is right." She bit off a thread with her teeth. "They will come to save you from me, or to save the town from us." Jake set down his rifle. "Let them come. You say that now, but when they arrive with torches and rope, will you still feel the same?" Jake looked at her, sitting there in the firelight, her dark hair falling over her shoulder, her strong hands working the needle, her face serious and beautiful and marked by too much sorrow for someone so young. "Yes," he said, "I will." 3 days later, they came. Jake was splitting wood behind the cabin when he heard the horses. 6 riders this time, more than Carter's group. These men wore badges, led by Sheriff Williams from Copper Creek. "Jake Morrison, we need to talk." Jake set down his axe and walked to meet them. Aiyana appeared in the doorway of the cabin, but stayed back. "Sheriff," he nodded, "what brings you out here?" "You know damn well what brings me." Williams spat tobacco juice into the dirt. We got reports you're harboring a dangerous Apache, one connected to the Fletcher massacre." "Reports from who?" "Don't matter who. What matters is the safety of decent folks." Jake felt his temper rising. Aiyana had nothing to do with those killings. She was 20 miles away when it happened. "That what she told you?" One of the deputies laughed. "And you believed her? Jake, these people are natural-born liars." "These people?" Jake's voice went cold. "You mean my wife?" The words surprised everyone, including Jake. He hadn't planned to say it, but now that it was out there, he realized it was true. Maybe not legally, but in every way that mattered. Sheriff Williams' face darkened. "Your wife?" "That's right." "Jake, you can't marry an Indian. It ain't legal. It ain't Christian, and it sure as hell ain't smart." Aiyana stepped forward then. She walked past Jake and faced the sheriff directly. "I am Aiyana of the Chiricahua Apache. I am not the killer. I am not a liar. And I am not afraid of men who come in groups because they are too weak to come alone." One of the deputies reached for his gun. Jake stepped between them. "Easy," he said. "Nobody needs to die here today." Sheriff Williams held up his hand to stop his deputy. "Jake, you got one chance to make this right. Send her away today, and we'll pretend this whole thing never happened." Jake looked back at Aiyana. She stood straight and proud, unafraid, waiting to see what kind of man he really was when the choice got hard. "No," Jake said. "No?" "She stays. We both stay. This is our home." Williams shook his head sadly. "Then you're a fool, Jake Morrison, and fools don't live long in this country." The sheriff and his men rode away, but Jake knew they'd be back, with more men next time, maybe with a rope. That night, Aiyana sat on the edge of their bed while Jake paced the cabin. "We should leave," she said quietly. "Go west like you said." Jake stopped pacing. "You want to run?" "I want to live. I want you to live." "And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home?" Aiyana was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My grandmother told me a story once about a bird who fell in love with a fish. They could meet at the surface of the water, but they could never truly be together. One would always be drowning in the other's world." Jake sat down beside her. It was warm and calloused from work, real. "Then we'll learn to swim together." Aiyana squeezed his fingers. "Even if it kills us, even then." The next morning, Jake rode into town alone. He went straight to the bank and paid off his loan, every cent he had left in the world. Then he went to the general store and bought supplies, enough for a long journey. Mr. Peterson counted the money twice. "Heard the sheriff paid you a visit." "You heard right." "And?" "And we're leaving. Tonight." Peterson nodded like he'd expected this. "Probably for the best, Jake. For everyone." That evening, Jake and Aiyana loaded their wagon by moonlight. They didn't take much. Clothes, tools, food, Jake's rifle, everything that mattered could fit in the back of a wagon. As they drove away from the ranch, Aiyana looked back at the cabin where they had found each other. "Do you regret it, loving me?" She thought about her answer, about the life she was leaving behind, the land she had worked for years, the only home she'd known since the war. Then she thought about waking up every morning beside her, about the way she sang while she worked, about the way she looked at him like he was worth something. "No," he said, "I regret that it took me so long." They rode west through the night toward California and a new life. Behind them, the sun came up over empty land. Ahead of them lay 1,000 miles of desert and mountains and possibility. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. but they would face it together, the rancher and his Apache wife. Two people who had found love in the most unlikely place and refused to let the world take it away from them. And that was enough. That was everything.